Tonight's case left investigators with a question they still cannot answer. How does a woman disappear and become the prime suspect in a murder when the man she was accused of killing was never dead? There was no body, no confirmed crime scene, no proof a homicide had even occurred. Yet a narrative was formed. A woman was labeled a killer. A man was declared a victim. And by the time that story began to unravel, the woman at the center of it was already gone. Before the investigation, before the headlines, before the accusations. Before we continue, if you love real mystery stories that unravel layer by layer and expose what really hides behind closed doors, make sure to hit like and subscribe. It helps push stories like this to more people, and it keeps you from missing the next shocking update in this case. This story begins with a relationship that was never meant to be seen. 26-year-old Leila Monroe lived in a modest apartment complex on the edge of the city. A quiet neighborhood, working class, unremarkable. She worked 2 part-time jobs, managed her money carefully, and kept her circle small. Friends described Leila as cautious, organized, methodical. She saved receipts, backed up her phone, and documented conversations. She was not reckless, and she had no history of disappearing. Across town lived Ethan Cole, 48 years old, recently divorced, financially comfortable. Ethan rarely stayed in one place for long. Short-term luxury rentals, frequent travel, minimal ties. Friends described him as private, controlled, and calculated. Leila and Ethan met through a private arrangement platform. The terms were clear: discretion, financial support, companionship. At first, the arrangement worked. Ethan paid Leila's rent, covered her phone bill, funded trips and expenses. In return, Leila provided time, attention, availability. But over time, the arrangement shifted. Ethan became more involved, more possessive, more demanding. He wanted to know where Leila was, who she was with, why she didn't respond immediately. According to friends, Ethan began showing up unannounced, questioning her friendships, monitoring her schedule. What started as support began to feel like control. By early December, Leila had made up her mind. She was going to leave Ethan. Not immediately, not publicly, after Christmas. She told friends clearly. She also told them something else, that Ethan would not take it well. In the days leading up to Christmas, Leila's behavior subtly changed. She became quieter, more cautious. She checked her surroundings, limited what she shared. On December 23rd, just before 11 p.m., Leila sent a short text message. "Heading out now. I'll check in later." That message would become the last confirmed communication from Leila Monroe. She never checked in. Her phone went silent. No calls, no messages, no location data. For someone who checked in daily, the silence was immediate cause for concern. By December 26th, Leila's family contacted police. At first, the case was treated as a missing person investigation, but that would change quickly. Too quickly, because law enforcement's attention shifted away from Leila and toward Ethan Cole. On January 3rd, a hiker made a discovery near a remote mountain lodge, a burned SUV. The vehicle was registered to Ethan Cole. Inside the SUV, investigators found blood on the passenger seat, on the door frame, in the snow nearby. DNA testing later confirmed the blood belonged to Ethan. At that moment, the direction of the investigation changed. Authorities publicly announced a homicide investigation before locating Ethan, before locating Leila, before confirming anyone had died. Investigators concluded Ethan had been attacked, and they concluded Leila was responsible. The reasoning was simple. The relationship was strained. She planned to leave. The vehicle was destroyed. The narrative fit, but the evidence did not. Medical consultants reviewing the blood evidence raised concerns. There was no pooling, no arterial spray, no spatter consistent with a fatal wound. The amount of blood suggested injury, not death. Still, the narrative remained unchanged. Ethan was the victim. Leila was the suspect. Despite not locating Leila, despite not locating Ethan, despite not confirming a death, prosecutors charged Leila Monroe with murder in absentia. A woman who could not defend herself was officially labeled a killer. Her name entered national databases. Her face became associated with a crime that had not been proven. Weeks later, something happened that should have ended the investigation. Authorities discovered activity on an offshore bank account, an account belonging to Ethan Cole, an account only he could access. Interpol traced the transactions. Ethan Cole was located, alive, living in Costa Rica under an alias, uninjured. Ethan told investigators that Leila attacked him during an argument. He claimed he escaped, burned his own vehicle, and fled the country for his safety. He never sought medical treatment, he never contacted police, and he waited weeks before resurfacing. Despite this, his story was accepted. If Ethan was alive, why was Leila still missing? Why were the charges not immediately dropped? Why had her phone never been recovered? And why did Ethan drain accounts just days before the incident? Months later, investigators recovered a deleted voicemail from Leila's cloud storage, recorded just hours before she disappeared. Her voice was calm, measured. She said she had discovered something about Ethan, and if she went missing, it would not be an accident. That voicemail was never presented in open court. So what did Leila uncover? Why did Ethan disappear before being declared dead? And how did a missing woman become the prime suspect in a crime that may never have happened? The digital trail and the evidence investigators overlooked. Because this pace is far from over. The voicemail changed everything. Because it wasn't fear you heard in Leila Monroe's voice, it was certainty. She didn't sound like someone being threatened. She sounded like someone who had just discovered the truth.
And what investigators uncovered next turned this case completely upside down. Within days of recovering the voicemail, analysts rebuilt the timeline. Not the official one, the real one. Phone metadata showed Leila accessed her cloud storage multiple times on December 23rd, minutes apart. She was saving something, backing it up. Then came a detail police had overlooked. Leila's phone did not die near the mountain lodge. It moved, briefly, at 11:58 p.m., eastbound, away from the lodge, and then it was shut off, manually. Investigators turned to Ethan Cole's finances. What they found raised immediate red flags. 3 days before Leila disappeared, Ethan transferred a large sum of money, not to a travel account, not to savings, but to a shell company registered overseas. A company created less than 2 weeks earlier and listed under a name that appeared nowhere else, except one place: Ethan's encrypted email drafts. Hidden in unsent emails were messages Ethan never intended to send. Notes, plans, fragments. One draft stood out: departure window, Christmas week. Another read, vehicle disposal complete. And then there was a third: L knows, must accelerate. That draft was timestamped hours before Leila vanished. When investigators returned to the mountain lodge, they weren't looking for remains. They were looking for proof of staging. Burn patterns on the SUV confirmed something crucial. The fire started from the inside, from the driver's side. Accelerant traces matched a container later found in a rental unit tied to Ethan, meaning the vehicle wasn't destroyed in panic. It was destroyed deliberately, as part of a plan. Ethan claimed Leila attacked him. but medical experts reviewing his records found no corresponding injuries, no stitches, no scarring, no hospital visits. Even more damaging, Ethan's passport showed he had booked an international flight before the alleged attack. His seat assignment, his boarding pass, confirmed. This was not an escape. This was a departure. Then came the discovery that redefined the entire case. Leila Monroe had not been planning to leave Ethan quietly. She had been planning to expose him. Investigators uncovered messages between Leila and a financial compliance attorney. She had scheduled a consultation, December 27th, 2 days after she vanished. The subject line read, "Evidence of financial identity fraud." Attached files were never opened because Leila never showed up. Authorities believe Leila discovered Ethan was running long-term financial fraud, using private arrangement platforms, using young women's identities, creating shell accounts, moving money offshore. Leila had access to his devices, his passwords, his drafts, and she understood what she was seeing. The voicemail wasn't a warning, it was documentation. Investigators now faced a chilling theory. What if Leila wasn't murdered? What if she was removed from the narrative, erased, framed, declared guilty, so no one would look for her? Because a missing suspect attracts less sympathy than a missing victim. And it worked. Search efforts slowed, public interest shifted, and Ethan disappeared, exactly as planned. Months later, a tip came in, a sighting. Not in the mountains, not overseas, in a domestic airport. A woman resembling Leila, wearing a red coat, the same one described the night she vanished. Facial recognition flagged the image as inconclusive, but the timestamp mattered. It was taken after Ethan had already been located in Costa Rica, meaning if it was Leila, she was alive, and she had not fled with him. Despite mounting evidence, the case did not move forward. Charges against Leila were never formally withdrawn. Ethan was never charged with obstruction, or fraud, or false reporting. Legal analysts believe the initial prosecution created a liability. Admitting fault would expose systemic failure, so the case remains frozen, incomplete, unresolved. Ethan Cole lives quietly, under his real name. Leila Monroe is still officially missing. Her case sits in limbo, neither closed nor actively pursued. But the evidence tells a story the paperwork does not. A story of planning, control, and a woman who found something she was never meant to see. Before Leila disappeared, she uploaded one final file, encrypted, unopened, labeled simply, "If this plays, I'm gone." That file has never been decrypted, and until it is, this case remains one revelation away from the truth. If this case has pulled you in and you want justice for Megan, don't leave without clicking like and subscribe. The next part of this investigation is coming, and you do not want to miss what comes next. Let me know in the comments, what do you think really happened to Megan? Do you believe she's still alive? And who do you think is lying? Ben, David Carter, or someone we haven't even uncovered yet? Your comments help this case and help this channel grow.